All right, so great to have you here with us on Hour 2 of Sun News Network Straight Talk. I'm Alex Pearson. This next story caught my attention kind of right away. It's been buried under a lot of headlines. Let me just set it up for you. So recently, the American Psychiatric Association made some bizarre comments when they announced that they wanted to redefine pedophilia to put it in the same category as, let's say, gays, lesbians, transgender. Basing it on the sexual attraction to children as another orientation, which I find absolutely staggering. But they've also made these other claims that it's only a disorder if there's consummation, and that being attempted is not the same as acting on it. So I have to ask, is it okay then to oogle, fantasize about a child at the same point, which I found very strange. So I thought I would call them and find out exactly what they meant. And they told me that they actually worded it the wrong way. And as you've been reading, this is now their statement that it's actually not a term used in the diagnostic criteria for pedophiliac disorder. And its use in the DSM-5 text discussion is an error and should actually read sexual interest. Okay, so I don't know if it's that they made a mistake or if pushback caused them to rethink their position on it. But they're not the only folks talking like this. We have a Montreal doctor who made somewhat of the same comment about this in the past here in Canada, which he said pedophiles are not simply people who commit a small offense from time to time, but rather are grappling with what is equivalent to sexual orientation. True pedophiles have an exclusive preference for children, which is the same as having a sexual orientation. He goes on to say you cannot change this person's sexual orientation, adding, however, he may, however, remain abstinent, which I think a lot of people would have a problem with. And one of those people is Theo Fleury, who you will recall not only a big-time name in hockey, but of course a survivor of Graham James, someone who violated him over and over again and made him a spokesperson who someone has come out fighting back against us. So let's roll what Theo Fleury had to say when he heard about this.
Some smart-ass lawyer, you know, probably was sitting around and dreamed up the word sexual abuse. And so now we have all these discrepancies between, you know, whereas sexual abuse you get a lighter sentence, instead of rape you get, you know, more significant sentence. So, you know, there's lots of language out there that that is, you know, come out in the last, I don't even know how many years, but you know, I think this is an important thing that happened, that they had to retract, you know, from orientation to really what it is, and you know, that's pedophilia.
So let's talk a little bit further about this. We're going to bring in Dr. Oren Amatei, a psychologist, and you have a number of expertises under your belt, but you can definitely speak to this because you do study behaviors. What do you make of the institution's comments?
Well, the APA, or American Psychiatric Association, they have a history of dealing with pedophilia wrong. And in fact, what happened in the DSM-4, which was 2 editions ago, okay, because it was 4, and then they had a text revision. What they did was, for a reason I can't figure out, and I spoke to somebody who was heavily involved with the DSM years ago, Dr. Robert Spitzer. He didn't know either. They tried to make pedophilia a disorder, as you discussed earlier, only if, so originally it was only if they felt bad about it, or if it impaired their functioning. So regardless of, okay, so if they acted on it, but didn't get caught and didn't feel bad about it, technically it would not have been a disorder. That was in the DSM-4. They changed it for the 4 text revision, and a lot of people don't know that story. I teach this to all my students.
Right, so their suggestion is, well, just because you fantasize about a baby, let's just say you look at images of a baby, naked child, get off on them, but you don't actually feel, you know, badly about it, guilty about it, or you don't act upon it. That's okay.
No, actually, in the DSM-4, it was even if you acted on it and didn't feel bad about it.
That makes more sense.
Okay, now I'm thinking that they were just trying to do something uniform, because those 2 phrases about whether it impairs your functioning or whether you feel significant distress over it, we apply that to a lot of disorders, and in a lot of cases that makes sense. Okay, if I have a fear of butterflies but it doesn't impair my functioning and I don't care about it, then I shouldn't be labeled with the disorder. But calling pedophilia or treating pedophilia the same way, that's very dangerous.
I would think so too, because just because someone is online looking at pictures or acting out on pictures, that doesn't necessarily affect a child directly, doesn't make it any less horrific.
Yeah, see, this is where they're trying to, I think, they're
be
trying
politically
to
correct? Come on, they're either absolutely completely ill-qualified to do what they're doing, and I view something like that as completely downright dangerous.
Well, they're saying that calling it a sexual orientation was a mistake. They're saying it was.
I think the gays, lesbian, transgender, I think they would have a big problem being put even near the category of pedophile.
Yeah, what they were trying to do is they're trying to balance science with the research and so on. And I think what they did was they took the human element out, and they
There's nothing human, I don't think, about pedophiles.
Well, that's what I'm saying, that they're not thinking about the impact that pedophilia, child abuse, and so on has on the victims, whether the person is directly acting on it or whether they're perpetuating a system that allows this to happen, through child pornography. So again, I don't think they were truly thinking about the real life implications of their decisions, and that's the problem, of course.
Well, it is a big problem, but apparently they're not the only ones who think this way, and that's what I think makes this even worse. Well, so the fact that you've got sympathizers to this, or those who go, yeah, I get what they're saying.
Yeah, and you know what, on one level, I do get to some degree what they are saying. We're talking very small.
What degree do you get?
The degree is that everybody has, there's a degree here, okay? Because everybody fantasizes, sometimes unwillingly, okay? They have a dream. You can have a dream about a child, and that doesn't make you a pedophile. We have to be very careful about over-pathologizing.
If I woke up and had a really bizarre sexual fetish type dream about a child, I would get my head checked.
Well, you know what? The dreams it's a realm that we cannot touch. It's a distortion of things that are going on inside of us. So if someone is dreaming about that, I'm talking a dream, not a waking fantasy, not an actively searching online, but if they're having these dreams, I'm not going to label somebody, a homicidal maniac or a pedophile or something because of what happened in their unconscious while they're asleep. Because again, what the dream represents might be very different from reality and how they really feel. So I'm talking about on that level, I can understand not over-pathologizing, but that level really quickly leaps into, again, viewing this, perpetuating the system of child abuse and pornography. That's where it gets very scary. We have to be able to draw that line.
Well, it does get scary, but it also brings me to what we have in the current situation with our sentencing structures and how we deal with these people, because let's be honest, in this country, it's a joke how we deal with those that prey upon children. They get virtually nothing. The fact that Graham James has been in and out of jail all these years after what he's done to his victims or survivors, or what they call themselves, is disgusting. But Graham James just represents one in a bunch. I've done a number of these cases, and you meet the children, they're destroyed for life. And these guys go in and out, in and out. So if we're going to make it easier for them, I have a problem with that.
Well, it depends on how this diagnostic criteria are used. If they use that and say, well, they have a mental disorder, treat them more compassionately or something, I would have a problem with that. Because I have no problem with treating many people with mental disorders with compassion. That's my job.
Of course.
But there are different types. Not everybody who is either sexually abused as a child or had a rough childhood or whatever goes on to abuse children. So there has to be some element of willpower or will, or so we have to include that. And I agree with you. The justice system here can be a joke in many cases, and it's the children and other victims who suffer. I agree 100% with that.
Right, and I think history has proven these people can't be cured unless you can actually point out a case. But of the ones I've covered, they're serial offenders. They do it over and over again. They have a profile type, and given the chance, they'll do it again.
The success rates are extremely low, and chemical castration, for example, doesn't really work because they still have the aggression, the anger, and whatever else, and they're still going to act it out, whether it's sexually or violent, some other violent form. So I agree with that. Success rates are pathetically low, unfortunately, and I mean, there may be some, again, we have to be careful here, there may be some category of somebody who somehow can be cured, and for those people, great.
I think where you could use that example is, let's say a 17, 18-year-old boy sleeps with a 15-year-old girl, and they find themselves all of a sudden charged with pedophilia, when in fact, they may view it as just a simple boyfriend-girlfriend relationship, and they've been thrown into that.
Well, technically, that would be legal, because 15 would be 5 years, but yeah.
But again, 17-year-old boy sleeping with 14-year-old girl. Is he a pedophile or just someone lacking judgment? I don't know if I could put them in the same category as someone, let's say, 18 preying on a 4-month-old, or a 6-year-old, or an 11-year-old. So that would be maybe the only example I can use, but I don't get the sense that there's a whole lot of sympathy in society today for these guys.
I would
gals,
hope not.
although they're mostly
it is mostly men, but there are women as well who sexually abuse children.
Carla Homolka, I think, in her sadistic crimes.
I've worked with a number of clients who have been sexually abused themselves by women, and you know what? Those people are some of the most unfortunate, because they're told by a lot of people in society, women don't do that. Mothers don't abuse their children. They would never do that.
Right.
They do.
Yeah, for some reason, and you are right about that. It is a double standard when it comes to women. Female teacher type sleeps with younger student type. It's cool. A video is made out of it. Guy teacher sleeps with young female student.
It's seen as a crime.
It is seen as a crime. So I think there still needs to be a lot of work done here. But I wanted to get your thoughts on this because it really struck me that they would say this, but they did quickly retract.
Right. And again, I'm not sure what the original purpose was for doing that because, like I said, with the DSM-4, the decision they made for that is mind-blowing. I don't know why they did that.
Just before I let you go, are you starting to see more of this kind of language, and should we be concerned that this is just, we're starting to get politically correct in this area?
In the APA, again, they're trying to take a scientific approach. They're trying to use research and so on, and it's a committee made up of different professionals. So in some areas we do see some language which I would question, and we do have to be careful about and make sure that we don't go too far, you know, in trying to protect the rights of people maybe whose rights shouldn't be protected. There are other people who we have to consider. Science be damned. Science be damned
indeed in this case. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you for
Appreciate
having me.
it. Dr. Amate speaking with us today. On this issue, I'd love to get your thoughts on this because I'm going to ask Gina to keep an eye on it because I have a feeling our viewers will have something to say about it.